Many hundreds of years before such harbours were built, that western shore would have been bustling with the traffic of trade and warfare. Its headlands, bays and inlets irresistible to 13th century Anglo-Normans bent on the conquest of Ireland. Here at Rindoon on St John's Point, the Normans have left us irrefutable proof, if it were needed, that they had every expectation that their conquest would be comprehensive and permanent. For they built here not only a castle and a church, as was their wont elsewhere, but a complete and extensive medieval walled town. What's extraordinary about Rindoon is that nobody else in the interim was inclined much to follow their example, with the result that that town has remained largely intact and unchanged since its abandonment some 600 years ago. Dr Regina Donlon is an archaeologist and historian who grew up close to Rindoon, but she readily admits that as a child she had no appreciation of the significance of these ruins, that for her and her friends were simply a place to wander and play.
In the middle of the 13th century, this would have been a bustling marketplace.
Just where we're standing, more or
Yeah,
less.
absolutely. This was the epicenter of the town right here. So obviously the castle is the main feature of the town, but there was 3 individual settlements here. There was a military settlement and a monastic settlement, obviously with the church, but also the civil settlement itself. So the town itself, so historians estimate that between 800 and 1200 people would have lived here at its height.
Right, which is a hell of a lot more than live here in Lecaro now at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe around the same number,
Yeah,
perhaps?
around the same number, but certainly no more than 1200
But in medieval terms, that would have been a big, substantial town.
This was a really significant settlement. And of course you had the sister town in Athlone developing at the same time.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously Athlone became the town that was more successful in the long run, but in its heyday, Rindoon was a pretty significant settlement.
So at the moment, they're all quite separate now. In other words, there's a field length between the castle and the mill and the church and so on. But would there have been like streets and houses and things like that connecting them all originally?
Yeah, so again, the archaeological evidence, we really don't know that much about it because there has been no archaeological work done here as such, so small little surveys and things, but nothing substantial. But the archaeologists reckon that the town itself and the actual living quarters of the town would have been further out.
Right.
So as we came in, we drove through 3 or 4 different fields, and each field was partitioned by a wall. So it's very possible that these walls represent the remnants of the old streets themselves. Right. So the actual people of the town, the townspeople, would have lived further out and then came in here to trade. And I mean, there was a bustling industry here. Just right over there, there's an actual galleyway, a slipway into the lake.
Right.
And there's a record in 1302 of a 32-oar galley actually being built here and set to water. So, I mean, the fact that you have an industry capable of building a boat of that size in 1302 really kind of confirms the significance of the town.
And these would have been lake-going people. In other words, that was their highway there,
Absolutely,
wasn't it?
Yeah. And I mean,
they came in via the lake, and all their trading and everything else was done via the lake.
Yeah, and this is one of the first entry points into Connacht as well. I mean, as you're coming up the Shannon, this peninsula kind of juts out into Lough Rees. So, I mean, Athlone, Rindoon and on into, I guess, down into Portrun, for example. These were all very important ways of accessing the west of Ireland. Now, we have tax records for the town right up until 1325, so we know that there was still an industry here up to that point. But obviously, I mean, the O'Connors were a constant threat here, right, attacking the settlement. So, and as well as that, I mean, you have the development of Athlone, so all of the industry is gradually leaving here and moving to Athlone as well.
Okay. So for how long then, do we estimate, how long did that community, if we can call them that, live here? 100 years? More?
I think maybe a little bit more. I would think somewhere in the region of maybe 150 to 200 years probably.
Really? Right.
Yeah, but
so several generations, in other
absolutely,
words,
several
right?
generations.
Had things turned out differently for those generations, then Regina and I might have been standing in a busy town centre rather than a green field. But history and geography, to an extent, dictated that Rindoon became a kind of medieval ghost town from the 14th century onwards. That's not to say that people didn't continue to utilise some aspects of the site in later periods. The mill that you see was built in the early 1500s, and on the periphery of the town, a post-Reformation church was built along with a hospital in the late 1600s. And believe it or not, in the 20th century, Regina tells me, John Leonard and his wife Margaret Ward raised a family of 9 children in a tiny lean-to cottage inside the castle, here at the foot of this castle wall. They lived here until 1948, and those children grew up to have very successful and some quite distinguished careers in later life. The name Rindoon, meaning the fort on the headland, suggests that there was very likely an earlier native Gaelic settlement, or at least a fortification on the site.